today we're going to be replacing the front tube on a 2DO. Now, as you can see, this one's completely done. Here's how we're going to do it. First, we got to take the wheel off the bike. Now, you're going to need a couple wrenches for this, and you might need a little help. Have somebody stabilize the bike for you, unless you have a stand, which we don't. So we're improvising. We're going to loosen it up. We're going to pull out the main bolt for the front axle. And again, I'm not a mechanic, but I am stubborn and I like figuring things out. Once we get the wheel off the bike, now comes the fun part. Here's the tire spoons, which go ahead and roast me. I don't know how to use them. So you'll wing it. So the first thing we need to do is unset the bead from the front rim. And yeah, the internet said this was easy. Well, yeah, it's not. Once we get the bead broken, we're gonna pop that front lip over the rim and we're gonna loosen up the tire. Now, what I did notice was the valve stem was completely sheared off, which made this part a little more difficult. But once I got that freed up, you poke it through the rim, and now we're gonna remove the old tube. Again, there's probably easier ways to do this, but if you're like me, you're just gonna wing it and make do with what you got. Pull out that front tube. Once you get it all the way out, we're gonna get the new tube. We're gonna take off the valve stem cap and one of the little nuts that are on there. Now, you could probably do both of them, but everything I've seen, one's plenty. Leave one on. So we're gonna put just a little bit of air just to get this tube in kind of a shape. You don't want a lot of air in here, otherwise it will fight you when you're putting it in the tire. Find the hole for where the valve stem is, and that's where we're gonna start. So point that out, line up your tube, get your valve stem in. Now this part can be a little tricky and it's a little difficult and can be painful on the hands, but again, I saw people using like dish soap, sliding it in. This tire was broken enough to where I didn't really need to resort to any of those techniques. But if you are putting new rubber on and a new tube, that's where you're gonna have a little bit of a struggle and you might need a little bit of lubricant. So again, we're gonna get this valve stem popped in. Now I can see that poking in. I'm gonna use my fingers on the underside of the rim to get it sticking all the way through. And now once we got that through, we're gonna grab the nut that we removed earlier and we're gonna slide that on. Now, important part here, you do not wanna make this tight to the rim. You wanna be able to have play with the valve stem so you can push the tube away from the rim when we're installing the tire back on. And then we go and we start shoving the tube in to the tire cavity. Now again, I'm not a professional. There's probably a better way to do this, but if you're like me and couldn't find a good video, here we are making one. Now again, roast me in the comments. What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? I'm here for all the feedback. So as we're shoving this tube in, you want to make sure that you get it past the edge of the rim. Otherwise, you're gonna have, the struggle that I had with potentially puncturing the new tube and finding out the hard way that you got to do this all over again. Now, once you feel like you got it good enough, do one quick double check all the way around. Make sure that everything is seated good and not in the way of the rim. I start at the valve stem and move my way back to the top of the tire. And I don't know how to use tire spoons. Am I using this the right way? Did I do it right? I don't know. So as we move, you wanna put a little pressure on the tire so it doesn't roll around. I just dropped the knee on it. And I'm just using force to push this tire down as much as I can to get it seated. Like I said, this is a used tire, so it does have a little bit more play than a new tire would. I'm gonna put a spoon in and I'm gonna start getting this seated all the way. And once you get it far enough, it will just roll itself over and on to the other side of the rim. Again, am I using the spoon right? I don't know. Did it work for what I'm doing? Yeah, probably a better way. I feel like this is mostly technique and I am lacking that. So maybe by the third, fourth, fifth time of doing this, we'll be good. But if you're with me this far, consider dropping a like and a follow on this channel. We're gonna do a lot more e-bike stuff. We're gonna do mods, we're gonna do repairs, and we're gonna do replacement parts. So this last little bit is always a bit tough. So if you have help, ask for it. If not, be like me and just make it happen. So we got this seated now. We're gonna screw this down. And I don't show this in the video, but after I put some air in it, I did tighten this down with a wrench. You don't want this part coming loose. Otherwise, you're gonna have some bouncing issues and you can shear your valve stem and end up in this predicament all over again. So I just did finger tight to this so I could get some air into it, make sure everything's good. And then I went ahead and tightened it down after the fact. Feels good. And I did put a pressure gauge on this, make sure I got the right amount of pressure in there. But again, I'm just testing to make sure there's no leaks, everything's seated good. And so that is getting the tube replaced. Now let's throw it back on. All right, ask for help again, because we don't have a stand and we are winging it. But get that bolt back in, throw the spacer on, make sure your brake rotor is lined up with the caliper so you can get that in. Kind of wiggle it, make it work, wiggle it, get it through. Once you get it popping to the other side, you do need to add the other spacer on. So grab that spacer. Now what we got to do is just tighten this down and you'll be good to go. So grab those 2 wrenches you had from the beginning, give it a few little twists and turns, make sure it's tight. You do not want this coming loose, otherwise that's going to end up for a bad day for the rider. So again, make sure you get this nice and snug on there, and just like that, we are good to go. If you do want to see more tutorial content like this, let me know in the comments.